First, they had to stop at a hardware store for some wire cutters. The parking lot was mostly empty because the store was about to close. Susan went inside, and Blakey waited with the car. They agreed his appearance would elicit too much attention. He sat on the trunk, a napkin stuck to his cheek, chugging a bottle of water to stave off the shape sickness. He was getting paler by the minute and staring off at the ground in a stupor. Susan returned from the store with a bag of items. All right, they didn't have any needle or thread, but this will do. She produced a tube of super glue from the bag. Super glue? He objected. It's all they had. Don't worry, I heard it works. You got the cutters, though? He made sure. Yes. She answered with some disdain. She put on a pair of rubber gloves and opened his shirt. She carefully removed the duct tape and napkins she had used to bandage his wound, popped a new bottle of hand sanitizer, and applied most of the bottle to his wounds. She expected him to flinch, but once again he didn't. He stared off into the night, and she realized something was deeply wrong within him. Waiting for the sanitizer to dry, she fanned it with her hands. When it was time for the glue, she carefully applied it to his cheek and pinched the wound closed, holding it together firmly. The gloves stuck to his cheek, and she had some trouble removing them without reopening the gash. She tossed the gloves into the bag and got another pair to attend to his chest. When she folded the hanging flap of skin on his chest back in place and began gluing, she winced for him. It looked excruciating. While she worked and waited for the glue, she asked, "Explain this plan again." "My phone is in my truck, I hope, if the police didn't find it. It can track the one who took Jonah within a certain distance. Not sure how far." "And how do you know your car will be there?" "Well, it's totaled. There is only one police impound lot in town." He explained and then finished his water and tossed it toward the nearby trash can, missing completely. This time she was able to glue the wound without the gloves bonding to Blakey's skin. "There. I think that will hold." "Perfect. Let's go." He zipped up his jacket to cover the wound and got in the car. "You're welcome," she muttered to herself, and collected all the makeshift triage supplies before joining him in the car. Only when they were crouching at the backside security fence of the impound lot did Blakey doubt his plan. Susan whispered, "Arthur, there's a guard. I can see him from here." Blakey made a shush sound with his finger and began cutting the chain link with the wire cutters. After making a hole big enough for himself to fit through, he told her, "You stay here." "And do what?" she hissed. Blakey then crouched as best he could with his injuries. Within 3 turns, he disappeared from Susan's sight in the dark maze of cars. The voice hurried him. "You better make it quick. You've sprung a leak, and sand is pouring out." There were high-powered security lights, so it wasn't too dark, but it was a maze of cars. After 10 minutes, Blakey was worried the car wasn't there. The FBI could have confiscated it. It could have been in some subterranean lab, awash in ultraviolet lights and picked apart by technicians in lab coveralls. He got to the last row and was about to head back to Susan when he practically bumped into his truck. It was a twisted mess, set apart and dangerously close to the guard's shack. He popped his head up to check on the guard before approaching the wreck. He tried to find a way in on the obscured side. When he pulled on the driver's side handle, the entire door popped off its hinge. His heart dropped with the door, but he caught it before it hit the ground. Unfortunately, it still made considerable noise. The watchman immediately stirred. The thin man in his mid-20s with glasses obviously took his job seriously, coming out of his shack with confident speed. The flashlight beam hit Blakey's truck seconds later, giving Blakey almost no time to hide. Blakey had ducked behind the white Perv van next to his truck and scooted 30 feet further behind a tinted window street racer and waited for the watchman to return to his booth. There was a moment where the watchman's flashlight lingered on the street racer, and Blakey was afraid some part of him was visible. He crouched lower, hurting his knees. he would not be able to hold the position for long. A rousing play in the football game the watchman had been watching saved Blakey. The watchman hurried back when he heard the announcer's excitement. Blakey carefully rose and watched over the car roof, waiting for the guard to resettle in his chair before returning to his truck. Leaning halfway into the driver's side, Blakey managed to squeeze his arm into the compacted footwell of the passenger seat. The car shifted and the metal groaned. Blakey stretched further and found something with his fingertips. It was his phone, but just out of reach. The truck groaned again when he pushed further. The watchman had young ears and looked up from the football game. Another amazing play returned his gaze to the game. A second later, the recognizable crash of a hubcap brought him running. When the flashlight hit Blakey's truck and the door on the ground, the watchman reached for his holstered sidearm. He searched for the cause. The flashlight caught Blakey darting through the maze of cars. "Hey, stop!" the watchman shouted at Blakey and chased after him, gun drawn. Blakey turned corners, trying to lose him in the maze. Panic grew as he knew he wouldn't have long before the watchman would call for backup. At the back of the lot, the watchman slowed and his flashlight beam moved closer to the hole in the fence. At first the light passed it, but then returned and zeroed in. He approached and crouched at the cut wire prongs in the fence, just before Blakey slammed into him. It sent the watchman flying into a row of impounded motorcycles and then into unconsciousness before even hitting the ground. Blakey hurried through the fence and looked for Susan. He had told her to wait there. He called out for her in a whisper, but there was no response. There wasn't time to search for her. Exasperated, he yelled her name. "Susan!" She popped up from behind a stack of waterlogged tires. "Why are you yelling?" "I told you to wait here," Blakey scolded. "I'm right here. I hid. There was a flashlight." She defended. "Did you do something to that guard?" Blakey didn't answer and hurried off back to the car. "Did you?" she prodded. "He'll be fine. Hurry, before the police come." Paranoid the cops would arrive at any moment, he broke into a near jog through woods separating the impound lot and the neighborhood where they left Golding's car. Susan had to ask him to slow down. They were able to get back to Golding's car with no signs of the police and were soon speeding down the highway, Susan monitoring the phone and Blakey driving to her updates.